Welcome to Lions, Tigers, and Bears.
Groundhog Day is a film about everyday life and routine. The question raised by Phil Connors fully applies to each of us.
What would you do if you were stuck in one place and every day was exactly the same and nothing that you did mattered?
We all experienced a similar feeling that we were stuck in one moment of life and everything is repeated over and over again. We get up, hate the alarm clock, drive to work on the same road, talk to the same people, do the same things on a schedule, return tired, broken. At home, we also do the same things as yesterday, the same things that we will do tomorrow, fall asleep, the cycle repeats. We can consider repetition as a fantastic assumption of a kind of curse, or as a metaphor that reflects the routine in our lives. When we first see Phil, he does not experience any real emotions. He just exists. He is only interested in himself and in what can make his life a little better. Nobody else and nothing interests him. In this context, it is quite appropriate that he bears the same name as the groundhog that everyone cares about, that everyone loves. Also, Phil Connors around everyone is trying to lend a helping hand. But Phil is too absorbed in himself to notice others or just think about them, even on the very first day before he repeats again. Phil is acting like everything is repeating itself over and over and has already bored him.
They pull the little rat out, they talk to him, the rat talks back, and then they tell us what's going to happen.
The same thing repeats from year to year. This guy knocks on the door with a stick. The unfortunate rat is pulled out. They ask her a question. She answers, and we find out the future. He knows how this ceremony takes place and does not believe that there is any reason for all this, that it all makes sense. When the day of this begins anew, and all subsequent days will be the same as the previous one, we must ask ourselves, is this really different from how he lives his life up to the moment? Every day looks the same. He wakes up, goes to work, does his duty, and then he hurries home. Nothing significant happens in his life. Groundhog Day of everyday life and routine. Why do we do what we do? If all this is meaningless and our actions have no logical ending, and is there a way out of this endless cycle? The short answer is yes. Using the example of Phil Connors, it is not difficult to trace all the stages of accepting a routine and the path that must be taken to get out of the cyclical everyday life. This is a film about the one that brings about a change in life that can force us to abandon the established boring schedule that cannot be changed from day to day. Doing what energizes allows you to feel better, not only by us, but also the people around us. According to the film, this is the love for others. In the broadcast sense, one day Phil took a step towards her and woke up to other people who could appreciate things that he had not appreciated before. Moreover, which he did not even think about. This is a film about the nature of change, and Phil, in this context, is just the perfect protagonist because he just doesn't seem to be able to change. He is selfish, a real asshole. It is not enough for him that he has, although many would dream of being in his place. Phil considers himself to be more important than he really is.
For your information, Hairdo, there is a major network interested in me.
He considers himself a world celebrity, an interview with a groundhog for which the maximum degree of humiliation. Rita sums up that his main quality is precisely narcissism, ego. It seems that he is not joking at all when he calls himself a god.
I'm sorry? What was that again?
I'm a god.
You're a god.
I'm a god, not the god. I don't think.
And this is not just the conclusion that Phil comes to after discovering that he is immortal. Phil was sure of this very beginning.
Don't you listen to the weather? We got a major storm here. I make the weather.
And this is his main problem. After all, the truth is that he is much, much less important than he thinks. Phil Marmot, who is not on, what does not matter, does not matter. He is like a weather forecaster that predicts the weather with varying degrees of success. Notice how Rita does this ritual with a marmot unwilling to get out of the hole. He walks out, looks around, wrinkles his nose, then sees his shadow or doesn't see, and this fully reflects Phil's situation. According to the ritual, winter will come if the groundhog sees its shadow, and for Phil, the same rules. For him, winter will end only if he gets rid of his shadows. That is, the loop disappears only if he leaves his ego.
Look up for your shadow there, pal.
And one day, Phil was pretty close to answering.
There is no way that this winter is ever going to end. As long as this groundhog keeps seeing his shadow, I don't see any other way out.
But change is a difficult process, especially for Phil. After all, he is a reflection of each of us, our laziness, unwillingness to change, anything. Circumstances lock him in a place where nothing changes, but not metaphorically, literally. Moreover, he finds himself locked in a small provincial town where nothing happens at all, and removing the animal from the stump is a big event. In such towns, life is slow, the embodiment of boredom and routine. Circumstances make Phil immortal because the expression, he would rather die than change. Fair enough to Phil, for such self-centered guys, one life may not be enough to change, and Phil is forced to go through all the stages of accepting a gray reality. The same stages that we face in trying to get out of the routine. First, we try to figure out what is wrong and where we turned the wrong way. Then we decide that the best way to get out of the routine is to have a full blast. But Phil clearly demonstrates that sooner or later, entertainment turns into the same routine. Then we try to fight, and if we don't find the answer, we end up depressed. Someone gets drunk, and someone begins to visit very dark thoughts. Phil's life is one big cycle with no beginning or end. He just wants this to end. Numerous attempts to break the cycle end in failure. And then he begins to come to the understanding that there is more than focus on himself. He lived for 1,000 days, but nothing changed because he did it all the same. In different forms, but in general, nothing changed. It was all the same as the first. Phil had decades of comprehension. He froze in one moment of his life without getting old. We do not have these extra decades. As the film is shown, if we have an infinite amount of time, at first it will bore us and then bring us to depression. If you direct all your resources to yourself to satisfy your selfish desire, you will not get happiness. For Phil, this meant that there was no tomorrow. That is, nothing would change. One day, he has a great day with Rita.
It's a perfect day. You couldn't have planned a day like this.
Well, you can. It just takes an awful lot of work.
He was close to answering. Every day can be good if you try, but Phil was only pleasing Rita for selfish purposes. And only by opening up to her, trying to share the warmth and not take it, he begins to understand what he really needs. Rita stays in his room. In the morning, Phil wakes up alone. Outside the window is still the same day, Groundhog Day. But the song on the radio no longer annoys him because the words of the song have acquired meaning for Phil. Phil really fell in love with Rita. He ceases to control everything. He stops taking. He begins to give. He greets people with a smile and warmth, reads books, does music, and ice sculpture. If at first he lives as if tomorrow does not come, then at the end of the film he does exactly the opposite. He lives as if tomorrow will come, although he is sure that this will not happen. Every day he catches a boy falling from a tree, saves Lester from suffocation, changes the wheel for lovely ladies, and even insures his life, knowing that he is not able to injure himself. It sounds pointless, but for Phil, it matters. Everyone around him is going through the same day, and he tries to make it better for everyone. This is where Phil's cycle of days is broken. Phil's last day at Punktassen is the day he lives for others, giving himself completely away from his selfish self. Phil's winter ends when he stops seeing his shadow. At the end of the film, he breaks out not so much from the loop of Groundhog Day as from everyday life and routine. The only barrier that did not allow him to live the day otherwise was in his head. You will experience the same day while doing the same things. Phil's routine was before the loop, the routine was in the loop, and will be after the loop. Even with a huge resource, it is not always possible to change the environment. But what we really can do is change our attitude towards others. All changes begin inside, and the goal of changing love for people, it is she who will help to overcome the gray days and live happily.